Okay, all right. My lifetime actually was involved with Beth Jacob to this extent. My parents were married. Where are you going? My parents were married at my mother, Alva Sholom's home on Jackson Street West. But she was married by Cantor Levinson, who became the chazan in the shul. Okay, so I was born in Buffalo. We emigrated here, and we came to Beth Jacob. I went to Mr. Gorelick for my bar mitzvah, but I was bar mitzvah in Beth Jacob, and I think it was Rabbi Wohlgelinter. How do you like that for a name? Rabbi well learned for a rabbi. Pretty good, right? Okay, we have a bar mitzvah, and our entire life, social life, was actually the Beth Jacob, because there was nothing else. There was no TV and so on. 1933, bar mitzvah, height of the Depression. We had wine and cake, and we had a reception at our house on Garfield Avenue. And we had a Sunday school. My uncle was a teacher at the Sunday school, Percy Wolf. And there was the Aviv Society. Your great uncle, George Goldblatt, Jesse Levine, very active in that. There was that young group, Harry Minden, Sam Pollock, Nate Adler. They had this group, Beth Jacob. Rabbi Warner, I think it was Rabbi Warner, took over. The sermons were all in Yiddish. The seats were benches. We had plush pillows, spittoons on the floor. Spittoons on the floor in a shul, incredible. Icons, the shamas, Abi Berg, smelling salts on Yom Kippur. Everybody was fainting, I don't know why. Mr. Davidovitz would auction off the high honors for the holidays. Unique. Dress coat, striped pants, gray Homburg. Beautifully turned out. The auction was in itself ridiculous, because members were half price. But the only people bidding were members. Why it was half price, I don't know. And my relation to the high holidays was that my grandfather, Oliver Shalom, who was a gabbai, was always given the honor of Nila, because George Pollock bought it. His father was one of the seniors, and my sister-in-law was his niece, so he would give it to my grandfather.
What was the spittoon for?
Pardon?
The spittoon, what was it for?
The spittoons? To spit in them. I know, it was ridiculous, but we had, I remember vividly, we had spittoons.
Why were people spitting in those days?
Why did we spit? Who knows? I don't know. And that was a style in those days. We're talking about 1933.
And what did the honors, the aliyahs, what did they go for? You said it was an honor.
I remember Mr. Davidovitz, Zwei Dollar, everything in Yiddish, no English. $2 for the first aliyah, the second aliyah, mufter, and so on. It was all cut and dried anyway, but that was the routine. And they would have a meeting. And of course, the greatest night of the year. What was the greatest night of the year in Beth Jacob? Simchas Torah. Why? The men sat with the women, or vice versa. It was the only time where the women were permitted in the bottom of in the main sanctuary. All the other times they were upstairs, and the high holidays in themselves were chaotic. Our secretary was Jack Friedman. He had a little desk at the back of the shul. We're in the Depression now. Nobody paid any dues. He would collect money, called Nidra at night. He would collect the money to come into the shul. Those that paid, paid. Those that didn't. The head of the Hever Kadisha was a guy called Isaac Levi. No relation to your Levi's, Isaac Levi. He was a wild man. Fisticuffs. They would actually come to blows in the shul.
For what?
Who knows? 5 Jews, 5 shuls. We had 5 shuls in Hamilton. The political, and your great-grandfather, Yankee Goldblatt, he was the icon, he was the guy that held the shul together. I'm not sure it was named after him or not. I'm not sure. Who was it named after? Beth Jacob.
And not him.
Yankee Goldblatt, banging on the sitter, quiet, quiet. And the greatest time was out of Shabbos. Everybody outside of Beth Jacob, we called it the gunnel. There was a tunnel, the train went by, the men would be smoking, your grandfather Elvis Shalom with a cigarette holder. Now, fast forward, Elaine and I in 1952 were married. We were the last couple to be married in Beth Jacob Shul, Jackson Street. Rabbi Jacob Green, tall basketball player, cigar, Sunday morning, 75 Robert Street, with getting his cigars from Barney Hirschman and his chocolate bars. The world revolved around 75 Robert, Tackman and Goldblatt. Ruby Levy marries the Tackmans. Bella Rose, his sister-in-law, married Louis, who passed away. So those families held the shul together. We were the last people to be married in that shul.
Can I ask you a question?
Pardon?
Do you remember windows of a special stained glass window in the Hunter Street Shul?
The back windows.
Can you talk about that?
I'm sorry?
Can you talk about like it was a circle?
Yeah. Blue would come through. Blue would come through. And everybody had their own seat. I know every family in the shul. And your family sat over on the right-hand side. But on Yom Kippur night, called Nidra night, Harry Goldberg of the King George Hotel would come to our shul every year with his youngest son, who became Bill Goldberg, our eminent physician. And every family had their own seat. So the chazan was Cantor Levinson, robes, a high hat. Now, we had a series of rabbis, very interesting guys. Rabbi Warner, he was an intellect, he didn't last long. Rabbi Axelrod, he lived on Kent Street with the Sobels. He had a variety store on Barton Street to make a living. He claimed his best friend was Jean Harlow, the hot sex symbol of Hollywood. How he became intimate friends of Jean Harlow, and he'd always talk about it. The sermons with the rabbi in Yiddish would harangue the congregation about not coming to shul. Talking to the choir. All those that aren't here, please stand up. Who the hell are you talking to? They would yell and scream, you don't keep kosher, you don't come to shul. That was the entire content of the sermon. We had a group of businessmen, Ken Sobel, Sam Pollock, Harry Minden, Jack Kosky, I don't want to, Sam Smirlick. It's time now we had a new shul. What's wrong with this shul? I'm not sure where the conservative movement came in, but a man on a white horse, Rabbi Simon, came to Beth Jacob and introduced conservatism. He introduced ushers at the door, no talking, decorum, respect, a little bit of intellect, a little bit of culture. In the meantime, it was revolving financially, and the strength of the community were the retail people and your family. And if I may say this, you can edit it in or out, I don't care. International went bankrupt. And Yankee Goldblatt and your great-grandfather, oh no, your grandfather, Frank, said, we're going to repay every penny. Are you crazy? That's what bankrupt, in those days, nice bankruptcy. When does it start? They repaid every penny, Ruby Levy. But that's another story. But your family, it's no secret, they said Beth Jacob are the Goldblatts. So this group of young businessmen came along. I don't know who recruited Rabbi Simon, but he introduced a whole new era. But before I leave the Beth Jacob, my favorite story is the B'nai B'rith. In those days, the B'nai B'rith was strong. And I'm particularly proud of the B'nai B'rith because my father, Alva Shalom, and I were the second father and son team to be president of Viceroy Reading Lodge. The first was David Sweet and Joe Sweet. Joe Sweet, who became a judge. I think our first Jewish judge. And we had a father and son night, and all of a sudden, a cowboy and a horse, a real horse, came charging. If you remember the Beth Jacob Shul, what was that, McNabb Street, the side street, steps down the side, charging down the steps, a cowboy and a horse on a father and son night. And who was responsible? The secret still lies in the grave. It was either Ken Sobel or Jack Kosky. Take your choice. So, the Beth Jacob Hunter Street Shul is sold, I believe, to a church, and it subsequently became Jackson Square and all that. Now we move to Aberdeen Avenue. Temporary chairs, no pews. Rabbi Simon lived in a house up the street. His wife was a powerhouse. She was of the modern conservatives. And when was Aberdeen Avenue? When did they start?
54. So
now you're getting into post-war, and you know the rest of the story. We had after Rabbi Simon, we had Rabbi Weiner.
Okay, stop here and stop here for 1 second. Do you remember when they hired Rabbi Weiner and the circumstances and why Simon left? How did that all happen?
What happened to Rabbi Simon? I'm not sure. But here comes Rabbi Weiner. I called him our first black rabbi. Our second black rabbi is Rabbi Selberg. And if you know what I'm talking about, I don't have to apologize for that. By that I mean a humanitarian, a mensch, honest, no bullshit, straight down the line. Now, Rabbi Weiner was ahead of his time. And his wife, Anita, they were from New York. And I not sure about this, but I think that she wanted everybody in those, not everybody, a lot of people in those days were going to Israel.